All right, guys, welcome to this Friday's rescheduled PPT coaching call. Hey, you're coming out. That's great, but it's recorded, so I appreciate it. So, can everyone see my screen okay? If you could just type it in the chat. Great. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to go over a couple different markets today, but I think one of the interesting ones that we could talk about, just from a principle-based perspective, is the S&P 500, because obviously, since this triple top here, which was around February, mid-February 20th, right? We've had a bearish, larger time frame bias, right? Because, when you have a zone here, right? Big moves come from big zones. If we flip it, right, it's good support, right? So you can think about it that way. So that's, but the idea is that, okay, so when, if you were going to reduce risk from a larger time frame perspective, it was certainly a spot to do it because let's just say you had a portfolio. Notice that we were in this multi-year since August, early 2000, July 21 to 3-year multi-bounce breakout. Look how I cloned this. It moved perfectly 100%. This is such an awesome principle, and I don't see anyone talking about it really but us here. So you could see how it moved 100% of the range it broke from. This is when I told portfolio manager that I met with that they need to cash out for a client that requested that I meet with them because I'm a technical analyst and they're a fundamentalist plus a technicalist, which means I don't even know. But they didn't cash out, but that's besides the point. But whatever, this might go up and they'll break out. That's what they think. But it's like, okay, wouldn't you now not take your first stab at reloading? So basically, what are we looking at here and what were we doing in terms of a day trading? I drew this zone ahead of time, right before it penetrated it, right? And we have to look at a couple different things. We have to look at leg count and what it's breaking out of, right? The leg count is one leg down, two leg down, now three extended. So when you're like, if you're only going, obviously the leg count is bearish. So if you're a really good short trader, you would be shorting on the pops. But if you want to also go long, especially at this zone, because you're thinking now that this is a strong enough bull bear zone where it could now reverse the bearish bias of the last 2-3 weeks because we've been in a bearish larger time frame bias. And what that literally means is that when you short, you get an extra weight on your short. Whereas when I was going long in the S&P 2 days ago, I needed, because I was going against that bearish bias, right? Even though we were at good support, I needed to see an edge in the internals, right? Now today, I didn't take the short because I overvalued the internals, which were like plus 700 when I went long, and then it hit the high of the day, and I was like, well, I'm not going to take this short. And it turned out that that was actually the trade of the day, is the short side. Now there was a couple more long setups that were fine intraday that I took, and one of them moved up like I think 30 points in like less than 5 minutes. So it's not like there wasn't opportunities, but the idea is that we've, at that point in time, right, because the internals were bearish, they were mirroring price. It didn't give as much of as an edge. Now, when could the bulls have taken control? At the very bottom of this special key reference area that I mapped out, which is a gap, right? Now the bottom of the gap is here, which is another zone, but here's the top of the gap. These are super. If you notice when I mentioned key reference areas to draw your support and resistance zones on any time frames, gaps are one of them, and we are dealing with futures. So that gap was zone. Now there was a double bottom that I was thinking, but I was like, oh, I almost took it, and then there was, it was heavy on the day, and I said, okay, well maybe maybe I'll let Friday play out, and then we'll go into the next week, right? And we'll say, right. So now that this has confirmed right buying tail, this was a pause day with the confirmed buying tail. Now next week we can be more confident with sideways up entries as potentially now this bearish larger time frame bias becomes neutral, meaning we're uncertain as to who's in control, and then it becomes bullish, reversing up. I mean, it doesn't even have to go sideways and then up. It could just start to go a V pattern and up, like 1 or 2 days and then up, or one. At the same time, I'm open to anything happening, right? Because even though this is a strong zone, we are, like I said before, multiple days. I mean, we do have this 100% range principle, and we're only 3 legs down, not like 5 or 6. But one leg down, 2 leg down, three, right into the bottom of the third leg. It's kind of sidewaysy now. It's not like because I was 3 legs down and I knew the larger time frame bias was bearish that now I could just like short any breakdown or the low of the day, right? Because those were actually long setups. It's like you just would have to have the confidence to short at the high of the day, even when the 80 line was like plus 800, because the larger time frame bias, even though we can't see it on our 80 line, doesn't matter because it's something that we're marking ahead of time from the charts. So technically, a really master trader would have like been long and short today, but just coming back from a vacation, it's a Friday. I've had some wins in this ES. I just want to kind of ease back up into it. And now that the market has kind of tipped its hand a little bit, it's possible now we're going to have easier setups on the long side next week, where now we can get good reward to risk ratios, because now we can possibly retest the highs now that this has held. If this is just going to be an extended balance, it doesn't mean that we can't eventually get a stronger breakdown at this, but we might be able to get some relief here. You see, there's a moving average here, 200, that's helping somewhat. But if you just look at moving averages and take anything literally, like, it moves around this moving average. So it's not something, and here it was spatially far away from it. Here it crossed it. So you have to look at those patterns and not use them so literally like support resistance, although they can act that way. You have to look at how price behaves around them if you want to use them. And they are helpful directionally in a trend. So even though I'm looking at this downtrend, we still, potentially, if you do multiple time frame analysis, you want to zoom out. I don't want to zoom out too much because I just want to basically say what is going to affect me tomorrow for a larger time frame bias. So in that sense, right, when you have such a strong magnitude of move, right, it's been bearish. This is also multiple weeks, right? So, I mean, you could say that it has been bearish because of the magnitude of move and how it's been coming down into this. But now that it's into this bull bear zone, it's potentially now is at an even stronger, at least temporarily, trend that can reverse it. And that's how you just like have to think about these things. Because if you're only zoomed in on one day or one, like for example, if you didn't zoom out and do that multiple time frame analysis, and you were just looking at like the last 2 days on a small time frame, you'd see one down move. But statistically, right, if you just zoom out and you just ignore the price action intraday, which could sway you from following a plan, then you would realize that it's very rare statistically to get 2 trend days in a row consecutively. It's just more rare to get. Just look at it right now. At the top of the zone, we had multiple trend days down, like one big day down and a sideways up down. But now we're at the bottom of a balance, right, where this is more extended. And like I said, this is a special zone to begin with. So statistically, you're more likely to get some consolidation. That was another factor why I was more likely thinking long today, even though there was that short setup that I mentioned, because we have had such a recent intermediate term strong downtrend, right? So because of this magnitude of the move, I marked that category bearish, even though time frame wise, it's only been 2 weeks, right, or a couple weeks. This is since February 20th, and today's the 7th, so it's been 3 weeks. So slightly, not quite a month big picture buy. So that has to be 1 to 3 months. But, because of the magnitude of the move and where it's coming from, that's why I marked it. But now we get to really zoom out and realize this is just 3 weeks, right? And now this is like months. And that's when I'm waiting and is a higher weight. Unless these are broken with conviction, then we had this W pattern down to hell, right? Which, is a possibility at some point in time because of this. I'm always eyeing this, right? This is, look at this. This looked really bullish and then went down quite a bit, but then eventually got out. But yet we're up one. Who knows? But at the same time, let's just bring in a little bit of fundamentals, right? We remember 8 years ago when Trump was in office, he started out with all these tariffs, just like he's doing now, and the market was all this uncertainty happening. Like there's mixed news, there's good stuff, there's bad stuff, and then it took off, and we've had a historic bull run. So that's possible that that could be that's what's playing out now in terms of the news and the fundamentals, right? But at the same time, just technically, just extracting all that, right? These zones were drawn ahead of time. It's purely in the charts. We look at volume, we look at things that are how extended. We have high volume node here, here, low volume node here, and then usually with the low volume node here, you see the tails. That's why there's not sideways action at these low volume nodes, but everyone sleeps on low volume nodes. You shouldn't. And I didn't even need to look at that to the right because I'm just looking at this gap. So forget that even really, because the gap is just representing the high volume, the low volume nodes. So whatever. It's just that the high volume nodes are kind of easy, nice to spot because you might not see, yeah, all this right here if you were just looking at, really quickly. They're not as obvious. But I like somebody asked in the channel if the low is in. Well, nobody knows for certain, but obviously this is if this closed really red and heavy, that would be horrible, right? So the fact that we got that strong reaction, and even if we missed it, even though I did have two, I think two winners on the long side, I just didn't capture the trade of the day, which was the long side. So when I said the trade of the day was the short side, that was only for the first part of the day. And someone said, "Hey, it feels like such and such as the Bears are in control." And everyone, this is an open channel, but at the same time, I'm a human being, and that kind of swayed me on honestly from giving the signal and going long again on that double bottom. And it is what it is. But if you think about it, right, here's where that was at, right around 12 something here, right? I was thinking about, right, I went long here, and I think maybe on this extension due to an 80 line, even though it broke the zone, it was temporarily due to the 80 line diverging. Here, it might have been disconnecting. Here, it was diverging. I can go into what the differences are. Here, actually, was doing neither. It was confirming price, but it was one, two, three leg counts down and at a much stronger zone and bottom building. Notice I didn't have any zones in between here. I'm not going back and switching these ahead. I'm not going back and switching them based on the price. Technically, right? People could actually pay for my technicals on the zones and they could even just trade them because like look at this double bottom. You could ignore the 80 line. Sometimes it actually throws you off and just say, hey, I'm going to fade this zone because it's bottom building in front of it. And man, what a move that was the trade of the day. But at the same time, now just from a daily perspective, now we potentially have sideways up entries. Like for example, just imagine here, right? There was the confirmed pause day up hammer. This is even more pronounced. And then look, sideways up. And that's what I'm thinking, sideways up. So that's what I'm imagining happening. Now that we had this scenario happen, it's the higher probabilities, but we're getting closer to the day, so it's fair enough I can say that. I guess the mistake sometimes people make is that once they saw maybe this, I'm trying to think when, and I'm not trying to call anybody out here because if I follow price too and it can throw you off, and I didn't take that myself, but let's just see, that was at that was around 1 o'clock, so I guess I can't really see that was around one-ish. So that was around here. Technically, well, there was this V here. So I'll say this today. If you didn't trade today, congratulations. It was a Friday. You wanted to wait for confirmed entry one way or the other on the S&P. So that was fine. I took these based on a bunch of other things. But yeah, this was nice for us to like to go long next week. Not that I really have a fight in the game regarding the S&P. Well, I kind of do. So I do want it to go up. But basically, I feel like there's been better trades, at least for me, recently in the S&P, because I get that one extra edge with the 80 line. Because quite frankly, this is such a nasty spot for Bitcoin. Despite all this news and this and yada yada, if we just ignore that, um, we see an area that's really developing sort of a contraction and a sideways fake out type of a thing. And you could see the CCI mirroring that. So here, way over the minus 200. I mean, we haven't had a hook from extremes like that in a dog's age, really. Look at this. Not since August of 23. So wow, we're talking like over a year and a half. So that's something. And then just to show you what we're dealing with here, we had this V pattern, and this was a strong launching point of directional conviction. Now, and if you just isolate that in and of itself, the highest likelihood next day is just a tight doji day that's going to decide something. It wouldn't be one way or the other because it's such a strong magnitude of the move. However, it's such a strong magnitude of the move, but it went straight line into. You could see here, what, and the HVN doesn't really represent it. It's this thing. Okay, you see everyone who was buying at these lows here, and then liquidated, 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 liquidated. Not everybody has such a long-term conviction. So when it goes back up here, everyone who was buying around here, right? This is also a zone, right? So if we were going to just really draw, not that we need to draw zones that the daily is just more of a visual thing for us, but zone, zone, and then there's obviously a zone at the HVN here, at the VPOC. So a problem. So when this came up here, you might say, well, what gets more weight? This strength of this tweezer pattern or this key reference area here? Well, this tweezer pattern, it represents this amount of space and volume and height. And this breakdown isn't just this move here. It represents this entire breakdown out of this balance, really. If you think about it, on first test, at least, you have to actually go back in time and say, wow, this is a mover. Bam, 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 bam. And everyone I was fading that every time. And then if I wasn't using a stop loss here, smashed. And then I come back up here and maybe I sell. That's what I'm imagining. And Kobe identified that as well in the red channel. That was a heads up that, hey, just because we're going back up in here, I mean, who's more excited? Basically, a larger time frame players reloaded, lots of traders cashed out. So it was basically two different time frames at play here. So now what's happening is that it's the same kind of thing happening, right? It's like that people might see this as a value buy, so they're defending it. But at the same time, people that got wrecked here are selling. Also, at the same time, people are just going to be selling there and shorting there just because previously they have as well. So there's that. And so that's just really the ugly pattern that we're in. Now, what I said for hopium purposes, which I took out the lines, but the chart is in PPT, is that if I'm imagining this fractal as a breakdown, and this now is a pullback breakdown continuation, and this is going to be a W pattern to hell, that's okay, fine, right? Now, but all I can base it, I don't know the future, but all I can do is I bet on patterns, and I just tend to bet just on the larger pattern. It just always it makes sense over a large sample size. Whatever fractal time frame I'm on, the pattern that it comes from will reverse the bias. So because this pattern is this size and it's huge and it broke down, the reason why we had such a strong V is because this pattern is way bigger. I mean, this pattern could swallow up this pattern. It's actually longer in the price value and the height, and uh, this is longer in time. So it's got both axes covered. So that's why I'm hopeful that overall, once this works out, even if this goes back down here, overshoots a little bit, that there'll be uh, that this pattern will play out. Now, if we can actually go on the weekly and we can just even get a better picture of this. Okay, so this before I get into well, I was going to go on the Bitcoin weekly, but let's just do that really quick. So let's just go on that time cycle, guys. Everything's really kind of factoring in for this, and I can't believe how spooky this is right now, right? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but this thing is look. Last time I hit this 30-week thing, smash up. I mean, granted, here it was a pause, but then we had a trend. Here kind of reversed and went up. So I mean, it's not perfect, but it's enough where it's like, okay, I'm going to give this some weight here. It does like this was sideways, and then we had a reverse. So I feel like here really it called it well. And also here was the January 16th, 10th signal that we gave live in the channel. it was basically the fact that markets go down, then they go sideways, and then they go up. Combined with this 30-week cycle, we actually predicted it the second week of January, which was awesome. And if you cashed in on that, you're fine. A little bit trickier up here, but now this cycle is happening around March 31st, which is the end of March, which would be in alignment with other uh, predictions of folks that have decent hit rates. I'm not going to name their names on this one, but it's recorded. But um, that just imagining certain things, right? Maybe here, maybe we the next end of March, we go April and May, right? End of May, right? Maybe even into summer. Maybe we do this a little bit. End of May, go away kind of a thing. We can pull it in a little bit more. Just imagine different scenarios where we cycle, and then we get that kind of uh doldrums in the summer where we're sideways, maybe retracing, and then we get that crazy last this might even be too much just to imagine, but just the idea that during that last phase, we get that really crazy cycle, and then we get the bear market maybe going into 26. So just different scenarios based on these cycles. But if you don't know the future, the best we can do is just take reasonable targets, use quad exits. But as of right now, everything's aligning that we haven't had an alt season yet. Let's just go to the Bitcoin. Um, yeah, here, this one. Now, I'm not a trend line expert by any means. I don't really use, I kind of use them to see direction, but I don't really fade them for support and resistance. But the idea is that we have been making higher highs around previous beginnings of alt seasons and bull runs and whatnot. You can see this is January 7th, 2017. Starts off a little bit sooner in previous bull runs. We have January 11th here, and I'm not. We're no. I can pull this up a little bit more around here, right? So kind of in alignment. But that's holding for now. Another scenario is that maybe this we have a little bit more of an extended cycle. We go down a little bit more, but as of right now, this is holding, and that is um, good for the alts. Now let's check out Bitcoin Dom. I guess I must have changed that scenario one, scenario two chart I had. Or was that on the daily? I might have had that. Let me go on the daily. Yeah, okay, this is the chart I was looking for. Well, I guess not. Oh well. Well, oh yeah, okay, so yes, this is the one I want. So we are at what I was hoping would happen where Bitcoin would have even stronger dominance, sort of a blow off top up here. This is not just based on the fact that we're at this key reference area, which is this strong selling launching point of directional conviction down breakdown trend down start. It's also a stat. It's the golden mean. It's around 61.8 at the same time as well of that ratio. However, it's kind of mediocre right now. I would like to see Bitcoin even have a blow off top come up here. It doesn't have to be right up here, but just somewhere up into that, and then we get that huge where the alts tend to really. But right now they just haven't, and not looking. We had all seasons without this, but it is kind of a blow to the alts that, as of now, uh, I guess it was interpreted that they weren't going to add to the alt other than Bitcoin. They're not planning on adding other digital assets that weren't already confiscated, something like that. Doesn't mean they can't change. And personally, Eric Trump, whatever the Trumps touch usually turns to gold. And if they're Trump crypto foundations investing in SWE, that's pretty incredible. As well as that lab group is pretty big into digital gaming, which is like a multi-billion-dollar, larger than Hollywood. That'd be awesome if SWE takes over a lot of that and decentralizes it. I mean, that was my rationale for getting involved with Theta, but Theta just doesn't. I love the technology of Theta, and especially when it was focusing on decentralized video streaming, which would have definitely helped Netflix. If you guys watched the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul live, which I did, it buffered and stopped many times, and I was like, man, they could use data network. I haven't published that coin. It's so low right now, but I might as well because like that's when you buy. It's blood in the streets. It's like around $1, and the highs are 16. And unlike last bull run, it's like they're constantly being integrated into all these top universities and corporations. So it's like, wow, the partnerships keep getting better, but it like obviously not reflecting in price. Like for some reason, Swede just and some of these other ones, obviously affected overall, but it's not like Swede's at its all-time lows, right? You know what I mean? These other coins are. So we're, same thing with Polkadot. I mean, that was at an all-time high of 56. It's at $4 now, and they're talking about a trust. So it's times like this where I kind of was like, man, I wish I just had all Bitcoin because you start to lose faith in these alts. But I just remember every single time before with all this U.S. involvement, there has been this alt season, which then you can make crazy gains. So don't have to even break, go to even new highs or even half. Like anything reasonably of what we had can make us a lot of money. We don't have to get crazy with them. I don't think any of them are done. Um, but they just none of the charts look clean. Like they just look ugly and really like if you can just compare them, even though we've had a lot of sell off in the ES, it's just clean. It's just a Y smash, right? Just a giant balance, right? That's how I saw this today at the gap. And if it held, we could, then start, but just they just don't look good. Like, look at that. Like, yeah, it's at these lows, and other times it was a Y double bottom and we had moves up. But until just the way that price is trending down and how it's been so bearish, you could see this moving average is hugging it like a son of a gun. Unless we get some strong momentum, this thing can just trickle down there. But you just got to remember, everything right now is blood in the streets. I mean, this is CeeLo. I have this one. I have Curve. I have pretty much everything in here is something I own, except for some of these that people no, actually, I removed some of those that people requested. I pretty much own everything in here, and it's quite frankly, it's getting hard to manage. And I just had to remind myself what James Ultra said. It's like, 99% of these are scams. So it's just like, I got to remind myself, like, well, these all could go to zero. Sell them as soon as you can. Just friendly advice to pretty much everybody. Now, a few of them I think might stick around. Like, I think Sui might be the darling. I mean, it is just if you look who they're connected with and, you know, say it for what it is Facebook, Meta, Zuckerberg, venture capitalists, the Horowitz guy, whatever. Just look connected to some powerful people if it gets involved in gaming, that one might. Some of them, I think Polkadot might survive. It's Gavin Woods, Ethereum, but I mean, even right now, Ethereum is just underperforming Bitcoin. It's just trash compared to. I mean, these are times to reload, really, if you believe in them. But it's just here it's a little bit different. These are the magnitude of this fractal is really big, and then we have this like basically this bounce breakdown W pattern. Now it's hitting this right, and this is sort of the inflection area here. It has to hold. This is potentially exhausted, right? You see there's a strong buying tail here. So this could, if this bottom builds, we could potentially, turn up here and then we retest this high volume node. But I drew this before just to remind everybody that just because we're at a level doesn't mean it has to now go back up because it went there before. That's only one factor. And if you remind yourself, even though this went up quickly around here, from here to here, this was, in 24, we had a sideways balance for quite a while, just preparing people for all possibilities. I mean, God forbid, we have a fractal breakdown, uh, which could, I'm open to whatever. I mean, people say what the lows are. Unfortunately, this system doesn't teach such certitude. That's the one thing the professional aspect has taught me is to, like, if I write in the channel and if I start to write or explain something and I start to speak in absolutes, I have to correct my language because I'm like, oh, then I'm thinking in absolutes. Then I'm not thinking in scenarios. Because even though we're coming in with a top-down trade plan, we have to be nimble in our thinking because the markets can do anything at any time. That's the first principle. So yeah, just so everyone knows, when I say big market snapshot, I'm just giving a snapshot and I'm giving a maybe a description. So obviously this was like kind of my really initial supports down here. This is just bounced. This should be pre-market. So you shouldn't have faded that. Hopefully no one did. And I would never give it late, right? You want to buy when it's into the zone more. So I almost made that note, but I figured enough people know when I write snapshot that they don't buy. Oh, you guys can't see what I'm looking at. I'm showing something in the channel here. So let me. So, hindsight bias is judging yourself with information that you didn't know. This did not look like a great day that might, you know, but at the same time, right? Even if you just look at this price action, yes, overall, especially like, right, the Bears are dominant, but they're not, this isn't like a typical trend day. You don't usually get these huge retracements on both sides. So, you know what I mean? Like this was a decent trade, right? Don't sleep on this. This is 700 to 43, and remember, like each point is $5. So, 4 to 8 contracts minimum, and it's pretty leveraged. And it moves, so it actually feels more exciting than Bitcoin trading, the S&P. But yeah, I mean, I think SWE is the darling of this narrative. I'm happy to invest in it. I went in really big again, reloaded, and Canary Capital registers for a SWE ETF in Delaware. I mean, this is opening. We are on the ground. We have basically front run institutions because, I mean, who else? This is great, really. Before, it would be hard for small guys to front run institutions because you'd have to apply, get credited and check and meet all these requirements. They basically keep it out. Now we front run the banks, so this is really great. Now, I was told this was, establishes a U.S. digital asset stockpile for other forfeited digital assets, right? Which I was like, oh, this is good, right? Government will not purchase additional assets for the digital asset stockpile. That does suck for alts. Beyond forfeitures, requires agencies to provide full accounting of digital assets to Treasury, positions the United States as a leader in government digital assets strategy. But yeah, but it's still going to pump Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin will still flow into alts. So I think and it could always change. And right, for those that have been here, right, we're extremely excited to announce a partnership with World Liberty Fi, a Donald J. Trump inspired pioneering DeFi protocol rooted in a shared vision. So, you know, it's when the Trump and is backing it, it's going to get more and more energy marketing hype, right? Eric Trump's already tweeting about it. He's a Web3 ambassador to the World Liberty Financial. So yeah, it's just, everything is, it's, if you still have faith in the alts, this is a shopping season, but it's like you have to have the ultimate faith now to go beyond sight, go beyond price, and, you know, shop at a discount, if you will. I mean, some of these just look absolutely wrecked that will never, like Ren, right? That's an AI coin. It's a Tika pick. I mean, some of these I think have firm specific risks and will never recover, but some of them will more than make up for it. So, right, this had a great run, but if people didn't sell, they're crazy, you know. And even me, I reloaded a little too soon, and now I'm sitting on a bag that up here was above break even, and now I'm still sitting on it. But when you DCA, there's no perfect in DCA. Here's data, which interestingly enough, I actually like the way that this is, even though this is pretty bearish, I like the way this is bottom building. It's far enough away from these moving averages where it's not where there's some reversion to the mean dog leash potential rather than that scrunch acting as resistance energy that these other coins have that I was talking about. We're at an area that had a huge move up. So even if you don't have this $16 target, which you could at least have targets up to two, possibly even $3, which is that's pretty reasonable, right? And the logic of that is that I can go into some of what's happening news based, but before I do that, I mean obviously a very ugly looking chart, but I mean this I'm on Bybit, so it's not going to go all the way back for that one, but it was 16 around, so but forget all that. I don't need all that data. I'm mostly looking at the last 1 to 3 months and then fractaling in. So we can, how I'm looking at this is that, um, you know, is this trend now exhausted into this trend, and now can it be neutralized and reversed? That's pretty much it. Any other time we went against it, this trend still had the bias of the bears on its side. You know, even at major support here, which had just temporary relief. Anytime it then went back up into resistance, you could say, oh, larger time frame bias then activated on shorts. Here, it's not so important because it's so extended and it's not at resistance, it's at support. So it's only a weight for resistance, right? It adds to the resistance and it can potentially take away, and it's heavy for it'd be a weight against along, but if you're at a major support zone, that can override it. But obviously, once it breaks, you back off. And now we're at another one where, if you like the fundamentals and the price isn't too scary for you and you know you should buy for blood on the streets for an investment. Like I said, I was trying to day trade theta. I don't recommend day trading alts, so I stopped that. But just to let's see if I can go to the theta channel. Where is the theta channel? I'll just find one person that I have a group in common with. Here it is. Okay, so right, Theta is proud to announce its latest academic customer, Kangwon National University Data Analytics and Machine Intelligence Lab, led by Seoul University. We're excited to announce that Nubia, a D physical infrastructure, so DPIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Protocol Building, the world's largest real-world data network, will use Theta, edge clouds, distributed GPU resources for AI model training on data generated by their real-time weather. So they're helping with weather now. I didn't know that back in the day. They're doing a lot of pivoting from when I just thought it was decentralized video, to be quite frank. And I actually mentioned I tagged Mitch Liu in their channel about why don't you contact Netflix because you could solve Netflix horrible disaster with that live stream they did between the Jake Paul and the Mike Tyson fight, which was terrible. Um, Despite a volatile month in crypto markets, Theta Network continues to build and grow in the new year. In this month's recap, Theta sees continued adoption in academia, Edge Cloud's expansion into esports, and the announcement of Theta Eurocon 2025. So they're partnering with some esports evil geniuses. Edge Cloud will bring their mascot mesh to life. So I guess now they're doing some marketing now. So Evil Geniuses is going to be, I guess Theta is now going to be their mascot. Uh, Another Asian university, right? What else? Another university here in Singapore, one of the most prestigious universities in Asia, is the latest Edge Clouds Academia customer. We got, and then, some American ones, Michigan State University. We're thrilled to announce that Michigan State University will be adopting the Edge Cloud for AI research, joining University of Oregon as the second U.S. customer, cybersecurity, and just on and on. Vegas Golden Knights. They're basically Theta's powering their chat service, their chatbot AI. Short term technically would be sideways now because we're just going the last 1 to 4 days, right? Intermediate term down. We broke through this last, week to 2 weeks. And if I zoomed out, I would say the big picture's down, right? But if we even zoom out more, right? When I say like 1 to 3 weeks, I'm just giving a rough estimate. Then we have to really zoom out. So, that's why this might neutralize it. And that's the idea in a lot of these markets right now. Obviously, Bitcoin holding here is huge, but Anything's possible. I you know, sometimes the best position right now is no position. I mean, this is much more clear odds, right? For an action reaction sideways up would be the next call. That's why I pivoted to this market. I mean, even though it was clearly down, it just you could just see like even if you were, I'm not saying you should be because I did mention the short to get out of this or short this. If you were just a long only trader patiently waiting, you at least get good moves, right? If you're trying to go against Bitcoin on the downside, it's really brutal. It just doesn't. I mean, I guess you could say here, but I mean, you could just see clock, clock, uh, you know. So some opportunities here, and it was tough to short this. It looked very strong. I'm not saying this. I didn't short it, but it just never feels right. But if you just think about the pattern, this pattern is huge, and this pattern relative to it is not, and that's what you need to bet on, not the immediate prices. So that's pretty much the market overview. Now, going forward, my position for income producing trades is to be very risk averse. I'm not going to be super anxious to get in. I think I jumped into a few Bitcoin trades and then just jumped out of them this week. There was some, I think there was more opportunities in the S&P, but I did reload it a SWE for the portfolio, which may turn out to be a bad bet. You know, if my thesis that this bounce breakout area can hold, right? It may just thinking in terms of scenarios, this could, right, maybe play out to almost trying to do a double bottom, which then leads into a breakdown, which then could lead into a slightly uh right sideways down here. Then we get that final reaction into this more, right? That would cover this node and that node, and then we get that up rather than trying to break up into this when there's barely any room. See how this is still the dominant, the larger bias here? And so I'm a human being too, and part of me reloading was getting pretty excited about some news things and the Trump and all that. I'm not saying that, I don't think this thing could go to the moon, but I'm just saying, just technically, if I zoom out and the excitement's gone, the news can sometimes get us a little bit in. I'm just thinking in terms of scenarios, and if I do that, I would actually reload again into this. This is the one coin where I actually would that I do talk about reloading in heavy into it because I'm not as comfortable as a even though I trade on multiple time frames, the DCA strategy is the larger time frame buy and hold strategy. But it's not something that I do. Like if let's just say this was Bitcoin, it would be a stop out, stop out, stop out. You'd have three losses in a row, but maybe max you'd be down 6%. If you bet two, which I don't recommend, you probably should bet one or less than that. So you'd be down like 3% to like 2.5, which does suck, but it would be much better than if you were trying to trade this and then holding this for like a huge like 50%. You know what I mean? If this was sweet, if you were trading sweet. Now, I don't recommend any income producing trades for any of these altcoins at all. I barely trade Ethereum for the income producing. I just recommend Bitcoin for the most part. So, but yeah. So going forward, I would just be cautious going forward. Um, for income producing trades with the S&P, like I said, alt season hasn't happened yet, and while it's very hard to time exactly when this will happen. If you still have a belief in alt season, these are at a discount, right? A lot of these coins are at a discount. Look at Polkadot. Like I said, it just filed for a trust. It does look horrible because we're barely away from this moving average, and it hugs it like a son of a gun. And just because we're at a price level doesn't mean this has to play out anytime like it did. But the idea is that just from a DCA perspective, right? And if you do believe in it, these are okay prices. Just be okay with, a longer horizon of sideways action. Like if I clone this, because every time price gets to like an area where reverse or something, people are like, oh, it's got to go down, it's got to go up. Well, just remember that it could just go back and forth. That's also an option that I have to, even remind myself that hey, this thing could just keep going for a while, get away from this moving average, psych you out of your position. But really, okay, fine. Let's say you dollar cost average here. Fine. For the next month, it's moving against you back and forth, but eventually it'll work out. it just doesn't look like it's just going to have any type of explosion soon. I just don't see that happening right now. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I'm just kind of preparing for the worst here as well. Now, like I said, once again, this is still 50-50 back and forth, right? Anytime it gets up to here, right? This bigger picture, people that need to sell at break even is going to represent that pattern. But when it comes anywhere near to the moving average, it seems that there might be some value buyers jumping in. So until that resolves itself one way or the other, uh, we're kind of in limbo here, and that's a position as well. This sort of bamboo up, down, but really nasty. We haven't had directional conviction. But that's been it. I know we only have one person on the call, Matt, but no worries if you don't have any questions. But I'm just, it's gonna last 8 minutes here. I was gonna open it up if you had any questions about your trades this week.
Hey, Matt.
Hello, hello. Thanks for
Hey.
coming out. Otherwise, I'd just be recording and talking to myself, which would be fun.
Yeah, great. That's good. Awesome. Yeah, pretty awesome session so far. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Um, yeah, what I found very interesting is that you don't day trade altcoins anymore because I came to the same conclusion. So I'm also trying to concentrate on Bitcoin. And since I started doing that, everything's been a lot better.
Yeah, I just, with the altcoins, they're so volatile that 1 to 2% rule that we need just to be sane, it's almost impossible. So it's like you might as well just switch strategies, DCA into something that you can afford to lose and hold for a longer term position for those, and then going a little bit heavy with the stop loss on the Bitcoins, and at least it moves like a more normal market. And sometimes I go in with Ethereum too, but Ethereum is just not trade. Does to me, it hasn't doesn't trade as clean. So, but sometimes if they're in sync, I'll use them for this intermarket synchronity, and then I can go like half and half in each. So maybe I get a little bit higher beta in the Ethereum. But yeah, sometimes they'll be at a zone, but Ethereum's a little bit more volatile. Whips down, stops you out, and then it works out. But Bitcoin just worked, and I was like, well, if I just went heavier into Bitcoin, it's a little bit less dramatic. So that's kind of what I moved towards um, for the income trades. But really, some of these position trades have been, when I cashed out of, let's see, it was Tensor. I put a decent amount on that because I worked with someone that gave me a pretty good signal about it. But you know, this was I think it was August when I mentioned it. So let's just go to August. I think it was August here. So this was maybe like a 6 month thing, right? And not a day trade or anything, but because it was like, okay, I can afford to lose this, I can forget about it, put on Metagas. But this was like a 9x. I'm thinking, whoa, you know. So yeah, I definitely like position trading the altcoins. The trick is with them, which we all know, is just when you find it when there's a technical signal, which there was multiple here with leg counts, and just how extended it was. If you can't go all in, all out, I went all out on it. But if you use the quad exit, take off 75%, because because I do get fundamental signals and I am generally interested in it. There are times where because I'm taking in so much data, my bias then becomes like, oh wait, I'm so biased on a belief from a fundamental perspective. And one of them I'll flat out say is theta, because I got so much. I had presentations on it. People met with me that are fundamentalists, and they told me about the technology. I kind of wish I didn't know much about it and just went purely on charts sometimes, because sometimes they're the best teachers. Um, but that said, you might not find a good project if you don't know about it. But I'm just saying that's kind of the risk that I've fallen into, where when I have position traded altcoins, maybe let's say, for example, Polkadot, I didn't take off enough because I fell in love with this concept of interoperability. But my greatest transgression of that was probably with Pirate Coin, deferring all my signals to like the movement and the energy behind it and the freedom and all that and the R marketplace and then the TDV. But at the end of the day, I'm 100% responsible for all my own trades. But I mean, just to show you where my mindset was, I mean, many times I bought it. I had an opportunity when I purchased even at a high price, like at $7, but it doubled. You know, and I think it went to 16 even. And I had like a couple times where I was like, oh well, Jeff Furwick said it's going to 50, and I don't want, it's the movement, and we're just getting started. And everything that I said there has nothing to do with that probability scale. When you double your money, it reverts back to the mean. I mean, and I put a huge amount on it, so it's like, unfortunately, I had to, you know, have a couple more lessons like that where it's like I had to kind of really evaluate how to approach this where I'm not so like I'm saying right now, don't fall in love with any of these coins now, you know, because some of these rooms that I'm in, like the tensor rooms, when mentioned, hey guys, I went out, I kind of got a little bit of a hazing from some of the fundamentalists. Oh, Matt just got scared and this and that. I used to be in a lot of those rooms, like the Elon trades and that. I kind of distance myself from them now, but I am in this particular room and they are Tensor fans, so they were kind of ribbing me. Well, I'll tell you right now, they're not ribbing me now. They hate it. I'm like, of course. I mean, what happened, guys? The technology didn't change. Everything that happened was just the price. But from what I hear about Tensor, from nobody from that room that I'm in, and I do know some of those guys personally, but this is just from someone that is not associated with that room, and they have direct info from the devs that they work with. Is that the Tau devs are really into Tensor, and it's still sound, and they're still going to be moving, and they're going to go back into it. So it's not like it's a dead project by any means. But the person that even gives me the fundamentals and understands it and has that insider information, I told that person, I was like, I almost sent you that signal, but since if people don't ask for my help or my opinion, I don't want to influence their bias because I know you long-term hold guys, have big picture beliefs, and maybe my technicals isn't appropriate for your time frame. Well, let me tell you, they were like, "Oh, please send now," even though they're in love with this project. Who wants to sit from $60 down to whatever it is at now, 13? I don't. That took half a year to get there. Well, that's half a year of your time. They could have been done with something. I'm telling you, that money was in my bank and I took a vacation on it. That's how you got to think. Someone else is going to take your money on this, and let's just not let it be us. Now, who would have thought with all this Bitcoin hype, that the S&P really is the one that's been performing really well, but that is what it is. But I'm going to give the floor back to you. I kind of was going on about it, but hopefully but I agree with you. Yeah, it's best to stick to what you know and stay out of alts for the shorter time frames.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just for me, like last cycle, I was able to make a lot of money of alts, and that getting used to like the opposite because Bitcoin was always very difficult for me to trade, and altcoins were easy. But I guess that was just because of that big bull run that happened, or that big alt season basically. And I was just like, it just wasn't hard to make money on them. And now it's different, and that's a new situation that you gotta get used to,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
just to play devil's advocate, is there any fundamentalists that you listen to or you subscribe to or whatnot that give sort of this big picture bearish outlook for alt seasons, maybe sort of saying things like, hey, this time's different. We're not going to have an alt season. It's all about Bitcoin now. I mean, I do kind of hear that from the Bitcoin maxis, but then again, I've always heard that from the Bitcoin maxis. What have you heard?
I think even more and more maxis are getting bearish as well, long term. But yeah, that's my impression basically. So to a point where even I got more and more bearish, especially for Ethereum, for instance.
Yeah,
That's
man.
interesting.
It's I mean, I just remember like, I just think like it's possible that there could be something explosive, but maybe it just happens like way later than we think, or maybe even not at all this time. But I always say like, that's usually when it turns, when it seems like it's so bad that it'll never,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it never feels right. But
Yeah.
I just tell you, if there isn't an alt season, just so you know, like I went in big believing in the whole alt thing as well, so we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, if it ever comes to an old season like we had before, I think like you already said, it makes sense to DCA now with even with small amounts because
Yep.
I was also used to higher amounts, and now it's hard for me to invest small amounts actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So gotta change my mindset completely.
Yeah, I mean, I had to really go. It was hard for me to like go back into Sweet because I just had to be prepared. Like, if I go into this longer time frame strategy, which that's how I made a lot of money in Sweet. It's like, well, hey, Matt, this isn't a day trade. This isn't an income trade. It's very hard to DCA and be like the perfect guy who captures the bottom. You just have to know you're probably not going to. It's just the nature of just sideways down, whatever, and then just know that odds are that this thing is not dead and this thing will keep going. Um,
I think so too.
I think so. I think they want to manipulate it to like no other. And you never know. This guy Donald Trump can pull anything out of his head. He might announce next month, "Hey, we got a digital asset AI reserve. We switched our mind. We can. You never know what these jokers will
Yeah,
do. He's probably positioning all. I mean, why would he have his son and his team talk about SWE and get into all these altcoins and Ethereum? He's got a huge amount of Ethereum. If he's all just about Bitcoin. So, but even my one of my advisors was saying like, even if these guys don't even want altcoins, you know, we didn't need them last time to have an alt season. It's sort of like a natural flow off. There's so much euphoria in Bitcoin that people just become drunk and buy stuff.
yeah.
But we haven't had that yet, Matt. So,
That's true.
but it doesn't mean that we won't either. We just got to be patient, diligent, and we'll take good trades for the income short term. If that means shorting, we short. If that means long, we'll go long. But from a long-term perspective for Bitcoin in the whole idea thing is even though the charts look pretty bad right now, I still have a big picture overall bias. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right.
All right, sir. Well, thank you for coming out and
Thank you very much,
yeah,
Matt.
you guys in the
Was
room.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye now.